So we begin today with a major trade report update coming from a Jake Fischer podcast. Jake, of course, works for Bleacher Report. We're going to break down the report and discuss if it's even a good idea to explore a deal for a point guard who only played in 50 games last season, and the season before, that particular player only played in 9 games. Hey, welcome back to the Timberwolves Digest. As always, North America, I'm Dave Dabbah, and I bring you daily Minnesota Timberwolves news, trade reports, trade rumors, and of course, a little bit of commentary on the side. Super fast, this show, totally interactive. I want to hear from you. Go ahead and drop your comments in. I read them all. I try to comment on as many as I possibly can. And of course, if you are new to the channel and you want Timberwolves daily news updates, then go ahead and subscribe. Now, as always, we're going to go ahead and ask a question at the very beginning of today's show. And that question is, should the Timberwolves actually go ahead and trade for Ja Morant? Now, I'm going to give you a counterintuitive conclusion at the end of today's podcast, but I'm going to start by simply saying this. The very idea of seeing like the 2022-23 version of Ja Morant play with, of course, the Ant-Man is extraordinarily appealing. Now, in that particular season I just mentioned, Ja actually scored 26 points per game and averaged 8.1 assists. Who doesn't actually want to see that actually happen with Ant-Man? I'm just saying it would be spectacular to see. Now, of course, the big problem, as we all know, is that Ja Morant has a hard time staying healthy. We'll get into that. Plus, we're going to take a quick look at this report that came out from Jake Fischer next. Diving into the report, now just in terms of us fans, we got a major rumor update coming compliments of Jake Fischer from Bleacher Report. He basically mentions in the report that outside of Miami, the Minnesota Timberwolves have been the other team that have been noted and have been, if you will, snooping around the Memphis Grizzlies, trying to figure out if a deal could be made for Ja Morant. I think it's at this point getting pretty real when we take a look at all of the other sort of veteran point guards that are out there, where Tim Connelly is actually focusing his time and effort. And remember, I'm going to tell you what my counterintuitive conclusion is in just a little bit, but it involves Tim Connelly basically looking for a fire sale. All right, so we know that the Timberwolves have a major issue at point guard at this point. Even my pets at this point know that the Timberwolves have an issue at point guard. Look, Tim Connelly is old, and basically he has nothing left in the tank at this point. Loved him, but that's just the reality of where we're at. Bones Highland is a nice player. He's costing you just over $2 million a year. Put up 14 points in the loss against Phoenix the other night, but he's not a true point guard. Bones can give you 10 to 15 points a night, but he's not going to give you 7 to 8 assists a night. And quite frankly, there are very few players in the NBA that are true, if you will, generals on the court. And then, of course, there's the enigma, which is Rob Dillingham. And we know that at this point, Rob Dillingham has been in Chris Finch's doghouse. Love this picture of Chris Finch. But it's true, and he's having a hard time actually getting out of it. In that game against Phoenix, Dillingham didn't even get his sweatpants off to get into the game. 0 minutes for Rob Dillingham in the game against Phoenix. Look, at the end of the day, we should probably give Chris Finch a little bit of credit. He has coached the Minnesota Timberwolves to not 1, but 2 Western Conference Finals in a row. So clearly he's got a good idea of what he has and doesn't have with Dillingham at this point. which of course is actually going to take us back to the question around Ja Morant. Now, in order to actually get to a counterintuitive conclusion where I basically convince myself it's a good idea for the Timberwolves to trade for Ja Morant, we actually have to take a look at what Ja Morant is actually making per year. And here's a prime example of what he's actually making and under contract. And you can see it's not the most money that you might actually think. And of course, Ja Morant has had his issues off the court with the NBA, with Adam Silver. And we also know that Ja Morant, throughout his 8-season career at this point, has only played in 65 games or more once. So what you're getting from Ja Morant at this point, if you're getting Ja Morant from his first 4 seasons, then it's worth actually paying full price. But if you're getting Ja Morant from the last 4 seasons, it is not worth paying full price. And if Tim Connelly can actually figure out how to get Ja Morant and get all of those assists onto this team, and even this year with all of the stuff going on in Memphis, with Ja not getting along with the coaching staff, and with all of that, Ja is still averaging 7.6 assists a game, which is exactly what this Minnesota Timberwolves team needs. Now, there's also the question of whether or not this guy could actually handle working with Ja Morant. I mean, that is also a big question, but assuming that's possible, the last thing that the Minnesota Timberwolves need to do or should want to do at this point is trade this guy. And of course, Julius Randle has been a huge piece of this Timberwolves team for the last year and a half. And I hate to see them actually get rid of 22.9 points a game and 7.1 rebounds and 8 and 6 assists per game. That is way too much to give up to bring in Ja Morant, who at this point is a part-time player. Oh, look, at the end of the day, Ja Morant is a great player, and if you were somehow given the assurance that you were going to get Ja Morant from the first 4 years, then of course paying full price for Ja Morant makes a lot of sense. But I'm a big fan of actually trying to get a Ja Morant deal done. But the only way I actually look at this and think it's actually a good idea, my counterintuitive conclusion in all of this is simply to say, yeah, maybe you get rid of that 2028 draft pick and you trade some additional dollars that are down the bench a bit to bring in a Ja Morant, but you don't give up a Naz Reid or a Julius Randle. Love to get your thoughts and opinions on the topic. And certainly a Julius Randle deal or a Naz Reid deal. I mean, Naz Reid might have to be included in a deal for Ja, even in a fire sale moment. It's some question of whether or not you would actually want to do that at this point. All right, so that's what I've got for you on today's Timberwolves Digest. As always, I'd love to know what your thoughts and opinions are. I want to hear from you. Go ahead and drop in your comments. Do you think it's a good idea that we bring in Ja Morant? Do you think it's a bad idea? If you could get Ja Morant on the cheap in a fire sale, would you actually do it? All right, thanks so much for tuning in to the Timberwolves Digest. Once again, if you're new to the show, please go ahead and subscribe. As always, for the Timberwolves Digest, I'm Dave Dabbah, wishing you all a tremendous rest of your sports viewing day.